Hello, my name is Lee Taylor, and I really like to knit, so much so that some of my friends call me the Knitwit. I hope you enjoyed today's video and possibly even learned something. So let's get started. In this week's Knit Bits, we're going to have a bit of fun. First off, we're going to take a look at some modeling. Second off, we're going to take a stash dive into the indigo yarn, which is right down here. Then we're going to head on over to the Swatch Lab. We're going to look at some updates, and we have two bonus bits for this week. So sit back and enjoy Knit Bits number 9. To start off, we're going to look at a little bit of modeling, and we are going to see the pictures right here. And right here. Hopefully you enjoy. Let's dive into the indigo yarn back here and figure out and see what what yarn I have in my indigo stash. So let's head over to the overhead and take a look. Starting off this week's stash dive, we have Premier Yarns Serenity Sock Solid. It is a light fingering. It is 50% superwash, 25% rayon, 25% nylon. It is still in its skein, as you can see. 50 grams gives you 230 yards, and the colorway is navy. A nice, pretty yarn. Next, we have Yarn Bee Soft and Sleek DK. Let's zoom in a bit here. There we go. Soft and Sleek DK, it's all acrylic. 114 grams gives you 478 yards, and the colorway is denim. Next, we have Big Twist Cotton. This is an Aran weight. 85-15 blend of cotton and polyester, meaning 85% cotton, 15% polyester. 55 grams gives you 96 yards, and the colorway is Denim Splash. Up next, we have Hobby Lobby's brand I Love This Yarn. It is an Aran weight, all acrylic. 142 grams gives you 252 yards, and the color is dark country blue. It's a little brighter than what's showing up in person. Up next, we have another Hobby Lobby I Love This Yarn. Aran acrylic, 142 grams, gives you 252 yards, except this color is dark denim. And finally, we have Premier Yarns, their Just Yarn brand. It is Just Yarn Tweed, I apologize. It's an Aran weight yarn, 100% acrylic. It is 45 grams to 98 yards. This is the entire cake. I have 3 of them. And this is the colorway Denim Tweed. So let me zoom out and we'll take a look at all of our yarns together. Just Yarns Denim Tweed. I Love This Yarn Dark Denim. I Love This Yarn Dark Country Blue. Big Twist Cotton Denim Splash. Yarn Bee Soft and Sleek DK Denim, and Premier Yarn Serenity Sock Navy. So this is all of the yarns in the indigo section. So some of these actually do look a bit indigo, like this navy is a little bit more of a purple tint. But this is, I'm calling this the indigo because it's kind of the transition between the brighter blues and the purples, which is what indigo is, but there's only a couple that actually have more of a purplish tint to them. But that's okay, because it's my yarn stash and I get to sort how I want to. So this was the stash dive for my indigo yarn. Next, let's hop over to the overhead and discuss what gauge is. Our Swatch Lab today will not be knitting it together, but looking at an existing swatch and explaining on how to measure gauge and why is it important and what gauge actually means. So let's hop over and take a look. In this week's Swatch Lab, we are going to look at a already finished swatch like we did last week. But we're going to talk about gauge. I've talked about it in various videos, but we're going to take a more in-depth look at it this week. It can mean 3 separate things. And so let's take a look and see what those mean. So first off, gauge can mean needle size. So, which just means the size of needle that you're using. This is a 4.5 millimeter, which would be a 7. And what you would do is you could get a gauge, a needle gauge. This is not the same gauge as what is used for pierced ears. As far as I can tell, those are 2 totally separate sizes. I'm assuming the millimeters would work because it's actually measuring millimeters, but the numbers themselves are not the same for both things. So what you would do is you would take your needle and you would go through, and the smallest hole that it can fit in is the size, sorry, I was getting off screen, is the size of the needle. So see, it won't go in there. It's too tight. But it will go in there, which happens to be a 4.5 or a US 7. So that's one of the things gauge can mean. Another thing that gauge can mean is the tension and density. So this is the exact same yarn, knit on different size needles. And this up here is, you know, a little floppy. This down here is a lot more floppy. If we grab it, you know, it kind of collapses more. If we grab this one, it kind of sticks out a little bit more. So that means this is denser. Overseas, they don't use the word gauge. They use the phrase tension, which just means how tight the stitches are. This was knit with a US a US 11, which would be an 8 millimeter, and this was knit with a US 15, which would be a 10 millimeter. Gauge can also mean the number of stitches and rows in a given size. So if you, as I've mentioned multiple times, you knit what's called a gauge swatch to make sure you're knitting the same size or the correct size that you need. And so what you would do is you would knit you a block, usually at least 4 inches, sometimes 6 inches or 8 inches. It's important that if you're knitting the project in the round, that you knit your gauge swatch in the round. Just because of different tensions in knits and purls, and if you're knitting in the round, you're only knitting, so that can change things. But what you would do is you would get a tape measure, which this one happens to have 1 in inches on this side and centimeters on this side. And let's zoom in here and we'll take a look at what this means. So in this bottom section here, we'll measure this gauge first. So I don't know, it's kind of hard to see because it's a dark yarn, but can you see the little smiley faces right here and the little umbrellas up above it? So each one of those little bumps is its own stitch. So what we do is we come through, and here's our 4 inch and our 0. So what we'll do is we'll take some stitch markers and we will clip here at the 0, and we will clip, mark over here to the 4, and on the same row put this other stitch marker. Okay, you don't have to use stitch markers, I just find it a lot easier. And then what you would do is you'd go through and you'd count every stitch in between. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 stitches over 4 inches. Okay, so now we'll leave those markers here, and now we will measure rows. Now this is garter stitch, so each one of these ridges is 2 rows. So we'll grab a couple of stitch markers and we will start down here at this row right here, or this ridge, and we're going to measure from this ridge up to the 4 inches. So let's see here, that would be this, it'd be a half ridge on this one, which is okay. Okay, so now let's count, because remember, each ridge is 2 rows. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 23. So our gauge is 13 by 23 in using this size needle and this yarn, which is a lace weight yarn that I held triple, which gave me a bulky weight gauge. Okay, so that is what your stitches and rows over 4 inches is. Now let me explain why that is important. We could measure up here, do the same thing. You can use a regular, this is a yardstick cut down to 15 inches. You can use multiple things to measure. You just have to be, if you use this thing to measure, use this every time on this project, because each tape measure can be slightly different. So just be consistent with the tool that you're measuring with. Now the reason why this is important is this is 13 stitches over 4 inches. And say the pattern tells you to have 12 stitches over 4 inches. Now that doesn't seem like a huge difference because it's just 1 stitch, right? Well, say you're knitting 16 inches. That means you're going to have an extra stitch for every 4 inches, and you're adding 4 inches, so that means you're going to have an extra 4 stitches, which 12 stitches over 4 inches, that'd be 3 stitches an inch. So you'd have an extra inch plus some, so you would have 17 inches if you cast on, 12, and you're actually getting 13 with the needle, it tells you, and you're knitting along and it tells you to knit for 16 inches, you're not going to get the right size. Or say it tells you to cast on 12 stitches and you get your 12 stitches. Well, you're not getting your full 4 inches. And so you have to cast on, let's see here. Say you're casting on for a sweater and you're casting on 100 stitches, 80 stitches, 90, let's see here, that'd be, let's do, my brain has fried, let's say 120. So that would give you 12 over 4, and you're doing 10, so that's going to be 40 inches. Well, since you're not got the full gauge that you need to, your size is going to be either way too big or it's going to be way too small, because that 1 stitch extrapolated over multiple inches adds up. There is a better way of explaining it. I'm just stumbling over my words for some reason today. But the point is, if you don't have the stitch count that you need, or the row count, because sometimes it tells you to knit for 15 inches, and they're assuming that you get 20 rows per inch, which would be 10 ridges, but you're getting, say you're getting 25. When you go to, for example, a sweater, so it says knit 15 inches, and they're assuming that that's going to be, just for sake of argument, let's say that's 30 ridges. Well, if you're knitting and you have 25 rows, then when you go to knit the sleeve, it's going to assume that you got the correct number of rows here, and so your sleeve is not going to line up row for row with this when you go to put it together. And so your garment's not going to fit right, and you're going to have spent all that time knitting on something, and it may not even fit you. So take time, knit your gauge swatch, and make sure you're getting the gauge that the pattern recommends, or that you know how to adjust from what you're getting and how to make the pattern work, which is a lot more complicated because basically you are redesigning a pattern. Now, if you're getting more stitches per inch, that means your stitches are smaller, and so you need to go up a needle size. If you have fewer stitches, that means your stitches are bigger and you need to go down a needle size. And the way to remember that is if you have more stitches, let's say each stitch is a kindergartner, and you can fit 20 students on a 4-foot bench, okay? Tiny stitches, kindergartners. But you can only fit 10 footballers on a 4-foot bench because they're a lot bigger. So more stitches than what's recommended is you have too small of stitches. Fewer stitches than what's necessary, you have too big of stitches. So adjust your needle accordingly. Go down a couple of sizes or up a couple of sizes. Take time to do a swatch. You can always rip it out and reuse the yarn. This is not wasted yarn. This was done specifically to see how I liked the fabric and what needle size I would want to use if I use this yarn, because I still have some of this yarn. So that is what gauge means. And even more so, if you're only measuring over 2 inches and you have an extra stitch, that doesn't sound bad, but when it turns into 22 or more inches, that can be a huge problem. So gauge is extremely important, and it's worth taking time to measure and make sure you're getting what you need for your pattern. Don't skip gauge swatching. In the update section this week, I'm going to show you my finished blueberry socks. I'm going to show them to you in the overhead so we can compare them up close and take a look, but I do want to mention a couple things about them. First off, they were started September 28th, 2021. It did not take me that long to actually knit them. It just was in hibernation for quite a while. But each sock has 10,335 stitches, or 20,670 stitches total. Now, last week I was talking about the world's fastest knitter, and I said that I thought she could do 118 stitches, 1,100 stitches per hour, and I was way, way off. She can do 113 stitches per minute, which would be 3,000, just over 3,000 stitches an hour, which means she could do that pair of socks that I just did, 20,670 stitches. She could do that in just under, let's see here. No, I'm off still yet again. It's 7,000 stitches. Yes, it's 7,000 stitches an hour, because she can do that entire sock in just under 3 hours, which is an insane level of speed. So if she had my exact gauge, the exact stitch count, everything that I did exact with these socks, she could have the entire pair done in 3 hours. It is insane. So after this video, if you would, why don't you go ahead and go on over to Guinness Book of Records and check out the world's fastest knitter. In this section of the project updates, I have something very exciting to show you. So this is the blueberry sock. Let me zoom out as far as I can here. Move my light. So the blueberry sock and its mate. They are finished. All I have left to do is block them, and I may do that in a future video. I haven't decided yet, but the socks are complete. That looks a little bit, this one looks a little bit shorter. It's just because this one has been on the blocking form much longer than this one has. So that will, which means it's not exactly stretched out, but it's stretched to the form and size that it actually needs to be. So this one will get there too in time. And they have not been washed yet, which is part of what blocking is. But I wanted to show you these. Let's see if I can zoom in where you can see this twisted pattern here. Whoop, my cord's in the way. Okay, so on this one in particular, it's easier to see because the colors are lighter. So there's a twist right here, 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 and here. So there's 4 twists up, and it's every other rib. You can tell it a lot better in person. This one, like I said, it's a lot harder to tell because it is a dark color yarn. And of course, it's the same on both sides. Again, this is the blueberry socks. They definitely have a bit of a blueberry aesthetic to them. So I just wanted to show you this. I absolutely love this. This is a German sock yarn that is no longer available. And because it's a German sock yarn, I did a German short row heel, 2x2 ribbing on the leg, plain stockinette foot, and I did a rounded barn toe on the toe. So let's take this off of the form and take a look at what it looks like when you're looking at it face on, like you would be if you were wearing it on your foot. So this is what the rounded barn toe looks like. It's got, you know, rounded. And then you can see the striping pattern, the foot. So the German short row heel looks very similar. Let me see if I can do this here. To the rounded barn toe. So it's very symmetrical. There is a way of doing a German short row toe, but not the technique that I went with for this particular sock. So this sock is done. That means 3 of my sock project, my long-term sock projects, have been completed, and just 1 more to go. And then afterwards, if I decide I want to continue socks, I can, but I want to knit at least 4 pairs of socks. So when I get the final pair of socks knit, I will do a segment where I show all 4 socks and talk about the differences and what I did with each one. But there is a wrap up of the 2 blueberry socks as they are completed. So they are ready to be washed, blocked, and worn. This week, our knit bits, bonus bits, is going to be broken up into 2 parts. First part is the scissors that I mentioned last week for my travel kit. And second, we're going to do an unboxing. So I have the package here. I have my scissors here to open it. So let's go ahead and open it. I'm going to do the scissors in the overhead, but we're going to do the unboxing here. So I'm going to back up just a smidgen. And let's open this up. I'm going to cut it open instead of rip it open because of the sound. So let's go ahead and get this cut open here. Ooh. Let's cut into this. Let's get into this bad boy and see what it is. It looks like it may be, it is. It's been taped like nobody's business. So let's see if I can get into it without cutting any of the yarn, because that would be sad. Let me lower this camera down here a bit. Okay, I'm getting closer. It is a 55% cotton and 45%, this says PAC, looks Russian, the letters. It's supposed to be an acrylic, which I'm assuming that's what that PAC is. I apologize for all the crinkle and everything for the plastic. I did not realize how well they were going to package this, or I would have done something different. But I wanted to open it up on camera because this is an important yarn. And once I get this open fully, we can talk about why. Okay. So this is the full cake of yarn. It's Yarn Art Flowers. Yarn Art Flowers. And this is why I say it looks Russian, because I ordered some yarn from Russia and it uses those letters. I don't know if other places do that. The color is 267. But, oh, hey, you know what? They tried to make this an easy start, but there it goes. It got stuck on the other yarn, so there's some fuzz to it. But there's where you start the yarn. So what I'm doing with this yarn is I am knitting a shawl. That was going to be my project that I worked on throughout the month of October, and I decided to go ahead and start it now because I couldn't wait. So I chose yarn that was, show this side, colors that reminded me of Halloween. The only color that's not in here for Halloween is purple. I think of a lime green, a bright orange, black, and like a grape purple. Like maybe one of those from off that. Is what I think of when I think of Halloween. And I could not find all of that available yet. I could find some on Etsy, but they were small skeins and a lot pricier than I was willing to pay for this project. So this project, I will put the name up here, but it is called the Warding Spell Shawl. One of my own design. It's one of the 4 designs that I've been working on here recently. It is named in honor of one of my friends. I will not say which one, just to keep everything all privacy that needs to be there. But I am very excited. It is has some very unique features to this shawl. I've already done swatch. I already know that I like it. I already know the gauge that I'm wanting. So now I just need to swatch with this yarn itself. But I don't see any reason why it should not work the way that I had imagined. And this yarn, let's see here. This is a sport weight, I believe. No, I'm sorry. This is a fingering weight. So it's a lot finer than what I was hoping for, but that's okay because then I have enough of it. Let's see here. I have, see if I can find yardage here. Okay, so 250 grams gives me, well, I'll just show you what it says. That obviously can't be right because there's no way there's 10,000 yards in this, especially if there's only 100 or 1,000 meters. So I will look this up and give you the correct one. I don't know the conversion from meters to yards offhand. If you want, you can look it up yourself, but I will add a text for it right here to give you the exact yardage. But as I knit on this and as I work through it, I'll explain why I chose the different features on the shawl that I chose. So that is not only our bonus bit for that one. The second bonus bit in the overhead will be here. First section of our bonus bits is I'm going to show you the scissors for my on-the-go notions. Yes, these are my scissors. Those are my scissors for my on-the-go. They snap in together and there is no sharp point exposed, so there's no danger of stuff accidentally getting cut. They have little spots on the side where you can put a key ring through them. But these are my little travel scissors. They are also acceptable to take on planes because the blades are within the size that are not prohibited. I forget how long it is, but I think it's like 4 1/4 inches, and it's definitely shorter than that. So those are my travel scissors to go in my notions bag for when I'm traveling and knitting. And that will be the end of this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. We had some fun with a shawl model. We took a stash dive. We looked at gauge and what that actually means. We looked at project updates. We looked at my new pair of scissors. We looked at my new yarn that I just got in and unboxed. I told you a little bit about what I'm going to do with it, and it gave a look towards the future. So I hope you enjoyed this week's video, and I know I enjoyed making it, and I will see you next week for Knitwits, Knitbits number 10. I can't believe we're already 10 episodes in. Thanks for watching.